Everybody turn your mics on, because I have 6 o'clock. Okay, I call to order the Rolesville Town Board special meeting. We will stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight is a special meeting, and I think we used to call them workshop meetings, so we'll just go over some information, really not planning to take action on anything tonight. Before we look at agenda, I would say it's been some, I guess some things been asked about, is Rolesville counseling Halloween? And, we don't have Halloween, so there's nothing really for us to counsel. But we did send out a letter to the residents a few weeks ago, asking them to make sure that if they participate, that they, participate safely and stuff like that. And I tried to find out if any activities are going around in town. We couldn't determine any from the churches or anything that normally happens at this time of year. We couldn't really find anywhere that's having any activities. So I think for all intents and purposes, unless it's something personal going on, in somebody's neighborhood or something, we can probably safely say not much. But as I said last meeting, everybody's kind of getting fatigued with this coronavirus thing. But please hang in there. It's going to be over sooner or later, and really the cases are increasing. Really, probably maybe to the record numbers is kind of what I'm hearing. So. It's still here, whether we, like it or not. We can't ignore it, and also, we don't need to, let us our guard down. So let's keep our guard up as we go through not only Halloween, but we got 2 other holidays coming up: Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is a lot of people congregate for those too. So that's all. Try our best to stay as safe as we can in the next few months. So with that, I think everybody's got the agenda in front of you. There's 4 really business items and 1 closed session item. Any comments on the agenda? All right, I'll take a motion to approve.
Second.
Jackie, we give Jackie the second. Who's keeping, since Robin is sick tonight, as we see our clerk is not here, who's keeping the motions and the seconds and stuff? You keep that? All right, so I think Sheila approved and Jackie second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed. Okay, sounds good. Our first item is Rolesville, Wake Forest Transit Study. So who's presenting that? Is that all right? Step up and let us know your name and address if you would.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. My name is Ray Boylston with RLS and Associates, and I'm serving as the project manager for the Rolesville Wake Forest Transit Study.
That's magic.
I was like, wow, that was great. How'd you do that? Ventriloquist.
I didn't see your lips move at all. Okay.
Mike.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay. My name is Ray Boylston. I was hired by the towns of Wake Forest and Rolesville to perform this study. Live in Wake Forest in Heritage, only I guess 2 or 3 miles from here. Been living in this area about 14 years now, and in Wake County since I was 13, so I know the area quite well. So we are at the point in the study that our main objectives, just to back up for a minute, main objectives were to identify 3 transit service alternatives connecting Rolesville and Wake Forest. And we went over those the last presentation I gave here, and we'll kind of quickly go through that again. And another key element is that this planning study was funded through the Community Funding Areas Program, the Go Wake Transit plan. And so the second goal was to make sure whatever plan we brought forward here today, that it was going to be competitive. And that we looked at all areas to determine the best place for transit and what alternatives would work best. So we've got let me move through that. So that's transit alternative 1 was the Wake Forest Rolesville connector. If you recall that was the 3 runs a day, morning, midday, and evening. That was with a termini in Wake Forest at the Sheets and ending in Rolesville with a loop, as you recall, that covered Main Street to Town Hall to connect with the 401X, the Granite Falls Apartments area where a number of seniors is, and that's your highest density area in terms of townhomes and apartments, as well as a loop through Young Street and through Granite Falls. Service alternative 2, that was the microtransit service with Go Wake Access operating that. And I'm going to go off cue here a little bit. For some reason this does not look like the final saved one. So 2 was the Go Wake, 3 was the Uber Go Wake microtransit, as you see here. Public feedback was during the month of June. We used SurveyMonkey. The survey results, that's really what we want to talk about here today after the public had an opportunity to comment. And the results are as follows. Service alternative 1, which was that connecting route with the alignment that I just went through, out of 113 respondents on that, 44% selected service alternative 1. Service alternative 2 was the Go Wake microtransit. That's using the vans, and it's more of a demand response service. That came in second at 31.86%, and the final was the Uber Go Wake demand response service, which came in last. So you may ask, well, after we looked at those results, talked with Rolesville and Wake Forest staff, and the more we looked at that initial service alternative 1 with those gaps in times in the morning, midday, and evening, there was some concern that if somebody Miss Jones from Rolesville went to Wake Forest and went in to shop or something and lost track of time, then they'd be sitting there stranded for 3 hours until that next midday run happened. So there were some challenges with that, and some vulnerability in the service where people could miss that bus, and vans or taxis or something may have to pick them up. So that service schedule, the missed trips, and the other thing was that the more we thought through it, as you know, the Wake Forest Loop service is a free service. They do not pay a fare to get on the bus. And so there was some concern as well about, well, if you're on the Wake Forest Loop and then you transfer to the Rolesville Wake Forest connector and then all of a sudden you're paying $1.25, or vice versa, you're paying $1.25 and then you get on the Wake Forest Loop and it's free, that there were some inconsistencies and inequities in that. We also increased the service hours to run from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. to eliminate the gaps. And here's where I talked about eliminating the proposed original $1.25 fare. And this would maintain the same route alignment that we went through a second ago on the connector. There are some cost implications with this. That falls, the initial alternative one falls underneath the service that does not require Americans with Disabilities Act paratransit, which is an additional service for individuals that cannot walk 3/4 of a mile to get to their nearest bus stop. So under this scenario, those people that could be eligible for that due to a disability, you have to ensure that's a federal law, it's a civil rights, that their needs have to be met if they meet the criteria and they're eligible. And so you had that, and total service hours increase. And then we discussed the methodology to determine the cost sharing required for the 50% local match. And in the scenarios that we showed you previously, we were just looking at a 50-50 split. Wake Forest staff proposed what is not uncommon in other systems that have a route that goes from one municipality to the next. And Raleigh has done this as well with some of their routes, where you determine the number of route miles within each town limits and come up with a percentage. And if you run through those numbers, 2.03 miles are in Wake Forest, 4.2 in Rolesville. Instead of a 50-50 split, that would be roughly a 33-67, rounding off. And that would be a local match share for this enhanced service. For Rolesville, 96,308. For Wake Forest, 46,878. Again, that was a proposal from Wake Forest. And so when you look at comparing, just to kind of put things in perspective, you had an alternative 1, the original one, alternative 2, and alternative 3. The final recommended enhanced alternative 1 is actually overall cost a little less than alternative 2 and alternative 3. So even though it's a fairly significant increase from the original alternative 1, it's still below the other 2 alternatives. Now in this chart, we went ahead and broke out, as I discussed earlier, showing what the 50-50 split would be. That would be 71,593 per municipality. And then the other numbers I described on the mileage-based criteria. Because of the cost increases, you can see we projected the ridership to go up somewhat from 6 to 6.5. But again, with those additional costs, the cost per passenger trip would also increase some.
Explain the ridership.
The ridership is based on a lot with my experience with areas where I've traveled around the country and looked at more suburban areas that do have significant shopping, or they have a significant potential connection with the regional route. They have a connection with another transit system like the Wake Forest Loop. And, you know, this would be hopeful in year one. And as I'll show you later, it depends on population density, the frequency of the service.
You said 6.5, that means 6 riders a day?
Per hour. I'm sorry, 6.5 passengers per hour, so 13 hours, that would roughly be 80 to 90 passenger trips a day.
That's a projection, that's not
That is
reality.
a projection, complete projection. That's a bet.
And the reason I say that is I've been mindful of watching these buses as they come through here, as well as Wake Forest, because at one time my wife and I were tasked with picking up some children from school
Right.
at Franklin Academy. I've never seen anybody but the driver on any of these buses, and that really concerns me. It's like it's before its time. I have never seen anybody other than the driver on these buses.
Do you have any ridership numbers for the Rolesville bus as it is?
Yeah, I don't have that in the report, but I talked to Wake Forest about that, and their ridership, I think they have been running that route for 10 years now. And their ridership numbers started out slow, but I think in the last 3 to 4 years, I'll check and get back with your staff. I don't want to guess on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you also check on the number of riders that the Rolesville loop has? The average number?
Sure, I'll do that, but that's a different
It is,
type
but I
system.
just want to know just about how many
Or
are using the
service.
bus from Rolesville.
Okay.
You know, even though it is going a different route.
Yeah, I know it started out really slow the first few months, but I'll get back
Thank
with
you.
Kelly on that. So this just goes over what I've already gone over on the match. This is kind of goes back to the ridership per hour. The minimum standard for the that should be CFAP's Community Funding Area program is 6.06 passengers per hour. That is after they're very flexible with how long it takes to get to that. If you look at the program itself, they give you almost up to 5 years to reach that. So this projection for year one, even if that came in at 4, you'd have 5 years to get up to 6.5. And even when you reach that point, they still, if a community is dedicated to want to continue the service, they will ask for what new types of strategies or changes you're making to the route to increase ridership.
That'll be asked after 5 years. It'll be reevaluated after 5 years.
They're going to be tracking it quarterly. You know, they're going to be looking at the progress. And so it's under the minimum standard, which is 17. The ADA paratransit passengers per revenue hour, the minimum standard is 1.5. I think you're going to be close to that. The average cost per passenger trip, based on information that I received from Go Raleigh and from Wake Forest on what those ADA trips cost, we're projecting about $20 per trip. And that's standard, if not even pretty low, when you look at the Wake County system that runs the van service and helps seniors and disabled. They're covering the whole county, so those can be 28 to 30
So
per passenger trip.
ADA paratransit transit is a van service, you said? It's not.
And right now, Raleigh, the way, I'm glad you asked that. The way Wake Forest is handling that is through Go Raleigh has a couple cab operators that they work with on that.
So a resident would have to apply or fill out an application?
They
to
would,
know and
that would be and that's what they do. Wake Forest has a place on their website that they would apply, and it actually goes to Go Raleigh because they're the provider. You know, the big advantage for Wake Forest and Rolesville is you've got a really solid, knowledgeable, professional group of people running the Go Raleigh transit system. It's not like you're going out with an RFP and getting a service provider that has no track record.
All right, so we've got a couple of little ladies here in town that we see them along Rogers Road on their motorized wheelchairs, and they go to Food Line and back, but they couldn't get on that bus because there's no place to put their motorized wheelchair, correct?
No, it depends on the device, but I would say 95% of those motorized mobility devices, they have lifts. The vehicles would all have lifts or either ramps. They have a really stringent training on the tie-down systems. And
Bus
so,
driver assists them with
Exactly.
that, so they don't have,
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Okay, good.
absolutely.
So of the 113 surveys that you received, those were Wake Forest and Roseville, correct?
They were, and I don't have the breakout on zip
That's what I
code.
was curious about. I
Yeah.
wanted to know
Yeah.
where that impact is. And then you said that in Wake Forest, there's 2 miles in Wake Forest that are being utilized. What other system are they tracking in to go Raleigh? Because I know they're bigger than 2 miles.
So repeat the last part, I'm sorry.
Miles, when you talked about the mile breakdown and the cost breakdown, you said in Wake Forest, there's 2 miles that will be
2.03.
used versus 4 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Where are those 2 miles? Is there some other method of transportation that's being utilized that I missed?
Well, the total length of the route is roughly 6.2 miles.
And only 2 miles?
And only 2 miles of the length of the route is from your town, or Wake Forest's town limit down near the creek and the park
Into Wake Forest.
towards Wake Forest to the end of the route at the Sheets.
Gotcha.
But then, you might want to explain, then they get on the Wake Forest system. That's what I think she's asking is, what happens when they get off there?
Well, they'll connect with that Wake Forest loop that now goes in either direction. It's clockwise and counterclockwise.
So right now, there's nothing covering that 2 miles?
There's nothing covering that.
Okay, just needed clarity on that.
Yeah, this is a gap in service area.
So we have more miles because we don't have a loop, and this is creating a loop on our end? Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have more miles strictly from your town limits. The fact that in order to cover some pretty critical areas of Rolesville, if you're going to cover any areas, the 2 points would be, there's a fairly significant mobile home park over there at Young and Granite Falls, just north of that. And you would loop through there, and then your high-density area, the Granite Falls apartments, and those, I guess there are townhouses too back in there. You're gonna, if you're gonna have a route run like this, you're definitely gonna want to hit those areas.
It's gonna go through the mobile home park?
No,
At that corner.
it goes Young and turns left on Granite Falls, and that is like a very, I think it's maybe 100 feet
right
to the
there.
entrance of the mobile home park. And I drove back through there, I can't remember the number, but I think it was 70 or 80 mobile home units there. And those are typically very big trip generators, as well as the senior housing, as well as the apartments areas.
So then it would go to the apartments and or the townhomes and the apartments, and then it will go down to Sheets? Is that, am I tracking that right?
Yes.
Maybe you have a picture that.
Yeah. If you, let me walk you through it.
Yeah.
If it leaves the town hall, it's going to go down Main Street. It's going to turn left on Young. It'll go down to Granite Falls. It'll take Granite Falls by the State Employees Credit Union. It'll go directly across, It'll loop in by the Granite Falls Senior Apartment Complex and then come back out, and then turn left on Rogers to head to Wake Forest, and vice
People in the
versa.
trailer park would have to walk from the Daniels Street or wherever down to Granite Falls Boulevard to get on.
And there's a really good place for a bus stop, and it's not very far walk, not a very long walk at all. I literally think it's maybe 100 or 200 feet to the entrance. Any other questions about the, these are all great questions.
Did you say our costs would go down each year, and if so, can you explain that?
No,
I thought I saw that.
I've not ever seen that before.
I thought I saw that.
We did in the full report, there's a 5-year operating and capital. And for the operating side of that, I laid that out and then used a 3% inflationary factor for the remaining 4 years. I think it may be less than that, but I typically, for planning purposes, like to go a little bit higher so there's no surprises. I hope that's high. It has been traditionally. A lot of times it's been more like 2%.
I have a hard time with $96,000 a year. I really do. I mean, in 5 years, we've spent $500,000. We could buy our own bus, like the larger bus, like the church has, that holds what, 15 people, Ronnie? 15.
No, that's yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we could buy our own bus.
you buy the
instead of-
bus.
Yeah.
You're talking about the bus. No, it's about 30 people.
Yeah, okay, it holds 30 people. Yeah, and that bus costs less than $200,000 if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. And we could have our own transit service, bought and paid for before we spend $96,000 a year on 6 riders. I just have a hard time making these numbers work in my head.
I think you're alone on that.
Well, and there, it's, and I'm not advocating one way or another, it's completely your decision, but when but I've been in the industry long enough, it's not just getting the vehicle, it's the labor, it's the maintenance, it's the insurance, it's the capital depreciation, it's the driver training, having supervisors that are trained, drug and alcohol testing. Raleigh's, sure, if you did that and the town was willing to go through some steps to get to that point, I'm pretty sure you could do it less than what Go Raleigh charges, and they're at 85 per hour. But 85 per hour I just want to let you know, 85 per hour for a system like Raleigh is very low. When you take into consider overhead and all the training and bells and whistles that go along with it. But I hear you.
And I understand going to Triangle Town Center,
Mm-hmm.
But if I was in charge of it, I'd want to go. I want to take my senior citizens someplace that's got a grocery store. Like Heritage, 4 miles down the road. And I also have to believe one of these days shopping centers are going to be dinosaurs anyway because of online shopping. I just feel like we could better serve our people providing our own transportation and taking them to Wake Forest, where what we don't have here that is a necessity. Most of us, when it comes to medical, when it comes to groceries, and other shopping, Wake Forest has. And again, I'm just, maybe I'm thinking outside the box, maybe I'm not. I just have a hard time with $96,000 every year.
To me, it makes a little more sense at this point, because I agree with you on the cost, that it seems quite high. But we talked about there being a stop added at Lowe's Foods. There you have medical and shopping. So that would make more sense for Rolesville to me at this point. And I don't get the fare thing. I really don't. I don't get why you wouldn't charge I've never ridden a bus for free other than the downtown what is it called? Red Line or Red something in Raleigh. Red something in Raleigh, which
Yeah,
is for
yeah,
downtown
yeah.
workers. But I don't understand that concept. I've never,
Yeah.
in a city, I've never rode a bus for free. Maybe it's just me.
And that was, that was Wake Forest's decision. The only other system that I know in the state that is fare-free is, other than the special loop route in downtown Raleigh or services like that, is Chapel Hill. And they're only fare-free because they're getting, probably at this stage, a couple million from the university through student fees. Yeah. Well, let's just run through the scenario. If you decide to do this, the timeline would look something like this, and that would be application submittal. And if you opted to do it this year, this is the cycle that is the same year after year, at least for right now, according to the program. Application submittal very soon. The funding would be awarded in June. And then you'd have a number of things to take care of July through September. Service agreement with Raleigh, bus stop signs procured, locations finalized, installation, marketing materials, drivers trained on the route, oversight and management. And then with service starting up October 1. And then in January and every 3 months thereafter, a report on how things are going. So the decision points, at some point, I think there's no decisions being made at this meeting. Is that right? This is a work session, or is whether you approve of this enhanced service alternative 1 or you choose to do anything. Local match decision. Would you want to continue the 50-50 split or work with Wake Forest on a mileage split? And then either apply at all or apply this fall or next fall.
So the grant, the matching grant, that's every year.
That's every year.
So that won't stop. It goes on for eternity?
As long as the Wake Transit Plan funding source, the half-cent sales tax, does not get voted down in the future somehow or another.
You got to meet the numbers. The minimum threshold of 6. So probably will stop the grant. So that matches what we put in. When I say we, Wake Forest and Rolesville. So
50% of the total operating cost would then be.
Total operating cost must be close to $300,000 then.
I believe so. The total operating cost was $286.
So they'll pay it there. And this is Go Triangle that matches it, or?
This is coming from the Wake Transit Plan revenues, the half-cent sales tax money that generates, it was generating about $100 million a year. I think it's dropped with COVID to maybe 75 last year.
So if for some reason that went away, we'd be stuck with some new funding that we have to come up with.
Well, there's other funding that you can apply for. There's other federal funding. There's Section 5307 funding, and Raleigh used some of that to start the Wake Forest system. They were started before the Wake Transit Plan was passed. So there's other funding sources.
So you can, I'm just learning this, so you can only apply for one funding? You couldn't apply for multiple fundings for this
For multiple years?
in the same year?
Same year.
I think
You're going to
putting-
apply, and then once you're in the program, you're in the program. It's going to continue. Remember I talked about the performance standards? So they're expecting you to continue to get the money. If for some reason after 4 or 5 years those performance standards aren't being met, then there might come a point where they just say it's not working.
I guess I was under the assumption that there were different pots of money from different organizations.
Yeah, I think the
Oh,
grant
no.
itself
So the
requires-
Wake Transit Plan, that funding source coming from the half-cent sales tax, they've got money set aside for commuter rail. They've got money set aside for bus rapid transit, which is like light rail but on rubber wheels. They have money set aside for capital planning, transit planning. They got money set aside for the rural areas. And this is part of that rural community funding program. So this is going to remain a part of the Wake Transit Plan, the Community Funding Areas Program. Yeah. And I think if anything, it probably will increase.
Question. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
How about supplementing our share?
Yeah.
Is there other grants that could supplement our share?
Oh, for you to apply for money to get your local match? I'm sorry.
Other sources.
To get that number down.
Are we required to match 50%, though, ain't that part of the grant?
That's a
I think that
key
would be
part of it.
hard to get over. They won't give us a grant.
You ever heard the phrase skin in the game?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know the rules, but I think that is the rules.
There won't no a local commitment that this is something that you feel strongly enough about, you're going to put money in it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Can't get the first grant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got
Yes,
to,
yes.
I think, you know,
Okay.
it's based on us matching it. Us and Wake Forest
Yeah.
both matching. So I don't think we'll make a decision tonight. I don't think we're asked to make one.
Can I ask a question, Ray, real fast? But back to Commissioner Wilson's point. We didn't consider necessarily doing our own system. Would that be an eligible? Could Rolesville study, for lack of a better word, and do our own system? I guess for
that's I think anything's possible
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I think, you know, the one of the, it's not really a requirement, but it's kind of a caveat built into the whole Wake Transit Plan, but it's not etched in stone, is that the hope would be that municipalities would take advantage of existing providers. It's not to say, I mean, I got, when I started the transit system in Cary, I got courted by Go Triangle that they wanted to run the system. And well, Cary decided, no, we're going to run it ourselves. And we contracted out with a private provider. So I do think that's an option.
But if we do the 150 charge, then how much would it be? Or is that even possible? Can we request that?
The $1.25 that was originally proposed per ride, I think that generated, hang on, I've got it right here. I think it wasn't a lot. I think it was 14,000. So it's, you know, typically it's only going to cover 5 to 10% of the total cost. That's transit systems pretty much nationwide, unless you're in Boston or New York or LA or somewhere where you're going to have super high ridership.
At the 14,055?
Yes,
That's
I
not
thought it
very
was somewhere in that
significant,
range. Thank you. So if you're going to provide service in this area, if you want to, I think these three options, with the caveat that if you had another provider provide it, I don't know of any other service alternatives other than the three that we put together. I mean, they were pretty varied and I think innovative in terms of the Uber partnership that I actually had talked to our Uber person. Actually, I thought that was going to be the one selected by the public. I was a little surprised. And demand response, until you grow a little more, probably, that's why it surprised me. I thought that was the most logical.
It's hard to digest that survey number without knowing what percentage was Rolesville, what percentage was Wake Forest. Because we don't really know what the true demand is per town. At least I don't.
That is a lesson I learned with my GIS/survey partner, coworker. Yep, yep. That would have been helpful, I agree. Okay.
So really, alternative one is really not an option anymore. The three options is the enhance, alternate one, or alternate 2 and 3. So.
Well, I mean, staff came up with an enhanced service alternative 1. The original 3 was much less costly with the gaps in time. It's you know, my thinking when I put together that much lower cost alternative 1 was that even though it had gaps, it might help determine what the ridership would be. And then if ridership grew and you started getting more demands for residents for the times in between and the gaps, then over time it could evolve into this new enhanced service alternative 1. That was my thoughts going into why that was suggested in the beginning. So
I'm matching on the one. The original one was 51,900.
yeah. And you know, the truth is, if somebody did miss a bus, you could work it into the cost just for those instances. You could come up with a backup plan with Go Wake Access that for emergency ride type situation where they could come pick them up and take them home. There's ways you can do that. So
I think this requires the approval of both boards, I think. So I think, you know, Wake Forest's stance from my talking to them is, you know, naturally they're not going to want to do the 50-50 split because it's not equitable. I mean, they just got one stop, and we're proposing 3 or 4 stops here, I think. So, and also, did I understand that we will have more riders from Rolesville to Wake Forest and Wake Forest to Rolesville? Do we know that for sure?
I would think so.
We don't know that for sure.
we don't know that. You know, it depends. When I met with, it just depends on how many people, how it's marketed in terms of the 401X, and how many community college students really want to take advantage of that may not have a lot of mobility options. But it could who knows, it could be equal. It could be higher from Wake Forest to Rolesville if the community college students seized on that as an opportunity. But I've also heard from the person at the chamber in Wake Forest that they have a program that they can't get people to from over here, access to the loop to get them to some training. I spent about an hour with the senior center director in Wake Forest, and she indicated she gets calls all the time from Rolesville residents that can't get to their nice new big, I don't know if you've been there, but it's really a fantastic facility. But she gets calls all the time for seniors that can't get there and live in Rolesville. So, you know, those could be, she was pretty happy about the possibility and thought that a lot of seniors in Rolesville might take advantage of that and could get there.
To get there, that would be a connection or 2 for the seniors, correct?
It would be connecting at the sheets, and they would have to learn the time to be there. But if they took the counterclockwise route, they could be at the senior center in a short period of time. I think 10 minutes at the most from there, because they're going to head back down toward the Lowe's and 98 bypass and then go up and turn right to get to the senior center. Yeah.
Okay, any final questions?
Okay.
No.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll try and bring this back to you all probably in a month. Ray, we'll talk to you, but it'd probably be helpful for you to be back in the room, because we do need to make a decision on your interest in applying for the grant. The grant application is due in January.
They've actually started meetings this week, kind of preliminary meetings to review some.
So if there is interest, we would have to make that decision soon. If there isn't, obviously, then we could wait and go through more discussion over the course of a period of time. So we'll probably put it on in 2 meetings probably from now and just see where you are at that stage in your interest.
And we're not having any more information between now and then. It's just a matter of,
Whatever Ray said he was going to provide, and then probably not much more at this stage
it is what it is.
right now.
What we see is what it is, so.
Good questions. Thank you for your time.
And you do go to
Yes,
Wake
sir.
Forest soon? Meet with them also to present the study?
Yes, November 3rd.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the feasibility update on Public Works facility on NCDOT land.
Have a good night.
We have a copy of that study, so before you leave tonight, I'll make sure you get a copy of the hard copy of the study.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Commissioners. Appreciate your time tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about the feasibility study for the Public Works facility. As you know, we started this back early summer, around May, June. We really started going, and you approved the feasibility study to begin in July for the DOT property at the corner of East Young Street and the 401. So we're at that stage now where we've completed the majority of that work for that feasibility, and we'd like to share those results with you tonight. So you can see this is the property in red. It is located at the corner of 401 Bypass and East Young Street. It's 14.24 acres, and it's currently owned by North Carolina Department of Transportation. The sale price would be their appraised value. That value came in, their appraisal was done in May of 2017. So that's kind of where we are with the price on that property. I did talk with DOT. They said if we were to move forward and want to purchase this property, it's a 60 to 90 day turnaround time from closings on the property. It would still go back before their board after we wanted to initiate to purchase the property. So that's something to think about as well as that timing as we get into presentation.
All right, how many acres and what are they asking?
Yep, they're asking 30,000. Well, the appraised value was 30,000 an acre, so a total value of $457,500.
Okay.
So why the need? So I'm going to start with the need of why do we need the Public Works facility. As you know, our current location for Public Works is downtown in the old EMS building, a 2-story building garage that's downtown. That's our current shop area, our maintenance area for our Public Works. There's 2 bays in there. That's all we have limited to work on the equipment that we have. We also have limited space for a yard. That's where we want to store your materials, your mulch, your stone, and things like that. So where it is downtown in the current setup, there's very limited for that. And as we all know, our equipment's out in the middle of downtown as well. So that's something we want to make sure that we're securing and taking care of as well. The current site also is not a future site for Public Works. One, it doesn't meet and coincide with the Main Street Vision Plan, as we'll talk about later. And then also the site is a possible future site for the cobblestone development. Obviously, once that site comes in, Public Works will have to exit that site, and so we need somewhere to go and somewhere to go quickly, just because all of our day-to-day needs of a Public Works facility. This property here also, as we talk about it, also meets our future growth needs as well. So it's not a 5-year program. This is something that we can program 15, 20 years out to meet those future needs for the citizens of Rolesville. So what do we know about this property? So some of the things that we've come to learn about while we've done this feasibility is we would need to annex the property. It's not currently in Rolesville town limits. It is in our ETJ, so it'd just be a formality of going through the board for that. It would need to be rezoned as well. Portion of the property is in the watershed. Right now, I'm going to kind of show you, once we dig deeper, if we move forward with this property, we'd want to do the survey and properly align where the watershed line is right now. IMAPs for Wake County is showing it roughly to cut through right here. So this portion is not in the watershed, and everything back in here would be. Appears to us, roughly, we think it's probably closer to back here is more realistic. And again, once we move forward with this and you do the surveying, when you're doing your site planning, we think that line will actually be shifted a little bit as well, which will give you more coverage in the non-watershed area. And that's important to know also because you'll have 2 different zoning classifications for this property. Potentially, I talked with Danny this morning about what could we zone this for a public works facility. Would it be industrial? Would it be commercial? And we could classify all of it under the commercial. He believes under our current code. So this could be, a CW for commercial watershed, and your front property could still be C or CO zoning. So there's 2 options there for when we go to rezone this, and something we'll dig deeper into before we get to that time. As we also know, there's one access point, and that current access point is right here. And that is the only one currently, because Highway 401 is a controlled access road or bypass, there would be no ability to get an access anywhere else along the bypass. So this would be our only access point.
Which somebody is using as their driveway now.
The property line is right there at their driveway, yes, sir. So once it's surveyed once again, then we know officially where that line is, but it would probably be, it's showing on IMAPs as their driveway is on the DOT property, yes, sir. But with that, there's also, as you can tell, there's not much distance between here and the bypass. If it's a public works facility, we have the DOT most likely would grant us full access right now as we have limited traffic in and out for our public works. As we grow, we understand that would be a need and a safety. We'd probably want to make this a right in, right out just ourselves as well for safety. And if it was anything other than talking about public works, if it was a public park or commercial or anything else, it would be a right in, right out was all DOT would grant for this property right now. We also want to make sure that we touch on that. It's important also when we talk about this facility because we did budget for this to purchase property in this budget year because we know, again, with the cobblestone development, we've got to move public works and find a permanent home for them. So that's very important. It's in our CIP and our strategic goals as well. So again, we want to make sure that we stress all of that as we move forward, as we're trying to identify properties to find a permanent home for public works. So Withers Ravenel has given us 2 layouts. I know this is hard to see. They'll get larger here in a moment, one by one. You have 2 options. If I can use this mouse here. Option 1, I'm going to call this as our, for lack of a better term, it's our public-private partnership option. It's probably the best layout for that. We tuck the facility back in the back corner, and it gives the town the opportunity to work with maybe a private developer to create commercial right here along the frontage as well. So again, that would require other properties being engaged and involved with this, and that would probably move your access point closer down to here, which would make it a full access for both the commercial and for the public works side as well. So that's one option that the town can keep in mind. The image on the right, as you can see, the facility is closer to Young Street, and that's going to be your cheaper infrastructure costs. Obviously, you're not running water and sewer lines as far back, your pavement, things like that. So your infrastructure costs would be significantly cheaper by moving it closer to Young Street. So that's another option there as well.
If the back part is in the watershed, you would be allowed to run water sewer back there?
We can, because it's in our current ETJ, and as long as we stay under 12% impervious coverage, we would not even need to touch any of our special allocations. So right now, the way it's looking, we would stay under 12% impervious, even if we moved it all to the back. And so we wouldn't, and we could touch in that special allocation here, but we don't need to for that as well. Obviously, we prefer not to, and that's our goal, is not to touch into that.
I see the pond noted, and I'm having a senior moment. What does SCM mean on the blue beside of it?
That's your storm control measures. That's your water, stormwater control.
Pond? We couldn't tap into or run it into the existing pond?
I'm not an engineer, and I'm assuming no if they put it there like that.
That's crazy.
I mean, you have the options as well. Depending on that, we could breach and drain that pond and shrink our footprint for our wetlands area as well.
Would you still have commercial on this second one if it were moved up closer to Young Street? Or, yes, Young Street. Is that still an option for the second one, or just only if the first one, if it's further back on the property?
Right. These are all things that would have to really depend on the developer who comes in and how we can tweak it. We're not married to either one of these designs. This is just a true sketch.
Right.
Once you get into your site planning, these are going to shift and move regardless of whichever option we wanted to move forward with.
So I was just wondering, since you said that there's a possibility on the first one, is that still a possibility on the second one?
I think it would be tougher. It would be a little bit harder because you're trying to think about you getting your access road back in there to it. I think your access road would probably want to come in somewhere right in here, most likely. Right, and you'd kind of loop somewhere about right in there. So we may be able to shift ours back. But you think about a public works facility also, you want to kind of tuck it away. It's not really it's not the prettiest site in the world with your equipment. Your building's more of a shell building and things like that. So obviously we could do some plantings to shield it, but if you want to have commercial here, it really depends on how close do you want to be next to that as well.
Where was the commercial in the first one?
Let me go to this one here. Is it easier for you to
Hard
see?
on the-
Yeah. So the commercial would be something you'd probably want to encompass all of these properties here to really make it worth someone's while to do it. I don't want to speak for anyone, but that'd be my thoughts.
One piece of those already commercial, right?
Correct. This piece right here is already zoned commercial watershed.
That's not ours, is it?
That
No,
empty
ma'am.
lot?
Okay.
It's an empty lot, yes, ma'am.
The other two
Just
are
dirt.
only, two of them are empty,
And
but
then
one is not,
there's-
has a house on it.
I believe there's 3 homes right here and then 1 empty lot.
We've had a discussion with the private developer about the feasibility on their end of this joining, and they became less interested because of the proximity of the traffic amount created by a commercial entity, and what DOT would require for that second access where that red dot is. It would require a significant amount of queuing in there. So they, at this stage, and they're probably the most viable because they also own some of the property in this corner, are not as interested in pursuing a commercial. That doesn't mean they won't, but they are concerned by the amount of traffic a commercial would put on this corner and what the DOT requirements on Young Street would take in place. So that's why today we're not bringing forth a commercial venture. If that had proceeded further, we would be presenting that stronger today, but right now it does not appear to be of interest, but it still is something I think they're pondering.
Careful when you say the C word to this board, because we get excited. Commercial.
Well, I was too.
And then here's the other layout where it is closer to Young Street. So I wanted to kind of get it on the large screen for you to see. I know it's in the packet as well. But so again, this is the option here where it would be closer to the road, to the Young Street.
And I say all that because I want you to go into eyes open that it's more likely going to be our development. But that doesn't mean...
Commercial.
What's that?
Commercial.
No, more than likely will only be
Public
a
works.
town development in this, more than likely. But that doesn't mean it can't be continue to be reviewed by interested parties and such. I do want to go in, not making any promises on commercial on this parcel at this stage.
Now, I know it might not be needed at this point, but if we did option A where it sits back further, I know we'd have to have a right in, right out. Could that ever become like a pocket park?
Well, I'm going to let JG talk, but I think, I don't know about that one. I'll let him answer that specifically, but I think going back there really does open up lots of opportunities further for expansion of this site in the future. So if it becomes ours only, and we were able to expand in there within the watershed appropriately. Putting it deeper like that and moving it forward, I think you are allowing ourselves a lot more flexibility with this layout. We don't know the cost differential, but extending water and sewer and a service road, for lack of a better word, isn't that much, really. I mean, at the end of the day, and I should say that, I shouldn't make that promise either until I know what I'm saying, but I don't think in units, it's not going to be a significant increase. Do you have a perspective on what else you could use the land for?
We really haven't really dug in deeper, the size of it, With a public works facility, again, you want to think about the future of the town. What's 15, what's 20 years? This site gives us that ability to expand. As we know, Commissioner Vilgas and the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, we need other parks and other. This is really closer where Main Street Park, so there's a greater need for future parks in other regions of the town. But it's something we can look at, and maybe just a small pocket park or something like that. Some open space is a better term to use, or dedicate some of it as open space. But I haven't really dug deep into the recreation side of that. I was really trying to make sure that I can make it work for Public Works right now.
But I could envision an opportunity there, potentially, but not initially.
Right.
So the facilities that are on here, as far as the size, I'm seeing this size on here, is that projected 15, 20, 25 years in the future, or is that just a rough kind of draft?
Right. The 80 by 100 is pretty much what we've kind of programmed internally and talked with our engineers as well. That's kind of what we need right now in the next 5 years as we grow. So you can think about the growth and all the homes that are coming and how much more Public Works is going to have to take on in the next 5 years with utilities, with roads, and stormwater is a big one that's getting ready to come on that we're going to have to really start doing maintaining and having a plan in place for that as well. So there's going to be a lot of growth, I think, in the Public Works side of things, and then we're going to take on equipment and things like that. So you need that shop space and office space. So this size, if it gives you an idea, that 80 by 100 is about the same, maybe a little bit smaller than what the current fire department is, if that building is downtown.
But 5-year projection, when we're talking,
Yeah.
It seems really a short time.
It may be 5 to 10. We've really, that's where.
Doesn't take all that into account.
Right. So that's when we get to our next steps. That's when we'll really get into that. So.
And whatever you end up, my biggest advice is whenever we end up doing, if we go here, that building would easily be expandable.
I know, at a cost. I'm just thinking
Yeah,
about
right,
that cost.
right. I understand, right.
Right. Thank you.
So I'll kind of jump down a little bit to the third bullet on this one to address Commissioner Sutton. Your question is the timeline. Basically, it's a 1 year. If we said go today on this, it's basically about a 1 year turnaround from the time we start engaging with a architect and engineering firm, and that's where we'll do the program and design. Would be in that, and that's where we say what's our current needs and what's our future projected needs going to be. So how far out do we want to do a 5-year building, or go ahead and build a 10-year building? So that's kind of where that comes in. Then we also have the yard to think about too. Do you have sheltered? Do we have just open bays for your mulch and your stone? And do you want to go and do a closure to go and do our own salt? We currently have an MOU with Wake Forest to do our salt. So there's other costs that go along with it. What can we get by with? What's our immediate needs? So that would be engaged when we get with the architectural and engineer time. So really our biggest next step is the feasibility says, yes, this site works for Public Works. That the whole purpose of doing this exercise was, does it work? And yes, it does work. One of the things we liked about it was the proximity to town, the town core. Majority of the work that we do right now is, I'm going to call it inside the bypass. As I know we're growing and expanding beyond it, but majority of it is that. And then you think about the inclement weather and storms, majority of the work's going to be here. So you don't want to have to truck all the equipment across the bypass to get back into town. So that's one of our thoughts, to trying to identify parcels that are inside this right here close to the core. And the other one is a hard corner for a town gateway as well. That's another reason we kind of liked it. That's your true dedication as you're coming in. That's a gateway entrance right there at Young Street and the bypass as well. So you control what we put there, what goes there as well. So that was some of the thought process, along with it meets our needs moving forward. So our next steps will be, if the board, likes the property, likes what we see in the vision, the next process we would engage with NCDOT to go through it and talk to them about purchasing the property. And And then we would engage, once we get those talks going and moving, we'd engage with architect and engineer. We do have funds budgeted this year for the purchase of the property, of a property, and the feasibility study for this right here. So that's what we have budgeted. So we didn't budget the engineer and architecture, I don't believe, for this budget year. So that'd be something we would need to talk about in the future as well. But again, just think about the timeline with cobblestone coming up, the public works facility having to probably exit that site. What's our interim? So that's the things we're working around internally right now, is how do we get there and how quick can we get into a permanent site? So those are big picture items that are coming up pretty quick for us as well. So I can't stress that enough. That's why our urgency is to find property.
Are there any grants available to help? Just asking.
Yeah, it's something once we get some little more time, we'll try to dig in and see what we can find out there.
Yes, I got a question about the appraisal, and I know DOT had it appraised, right? And it's kind of what we're basing it on. And I just want to make sure that, it sounded like me, it's two major restrictions with this. One is natural watershed. That really is a restriction on the property. And the other one has to do with the right in, right out, for use of anything other than right out. So just want to make sure that the appraisal was done taking those restrictions in account, because, you know, I don't, you know, 30,000 to me seems a little high for watershed property, but it is in the ETJ, which makes a difference.
Right.
Makes a big difference because you can run water and sewer to it, like Jackie was saying. So, you know, it does make it a little bit more valuable, even though it's in a watershed, because it's in ETJ watershed, which makes a little difference. So 30,000 may be good, but I just want to make sure that that appraisal took all those in account, all those restrictions in account when they did that. And if we have to do one of our own, you know, I'm okay with that if we feel like we need to.
If it helps you, it's comparable to what we paid for the farm, and it's 100% in the watershed. So you got at least 4 to 5 acres right now.
For that.
Right. So we're in the ballpark right now for something that was not an ETJ and 100% in watershed. So again, if the board would like to do our own appraisal, I think, you know, get with Kelly and the manager and see what we need to do. But again, this appraisal was from 17, and I don't know, DOT's had a conversation with them as well. Would they accept our appraisal as well?
Right. Yeah, I think I was okay with, you know, originally, but then the last few weeks I've heard about this restriction on right in, right out type stuff. And that's the main thing. You know, the watershed, we always known that was there.
Right.
So,
We have the appraisal.
We do have the appraisal as well.
I think what you're saying is re-review it and make sure.
right.
Yep.
So, you know, in other words, at 30,000, should they give us,
15
right, full access? You know, that's what I'm asking. If they don't, then they put a restriction on sale, you know. And that's the only thing I've heard change in the last couple of years, because, you know, this has been going on for a while.
My goal, if we get a relatively green light to continue tonight, would be I would like to negotiate an agreement with DOT contingent upon, so that we could go through the zoning and a little bit more preliminary analysis and get somebody on board in case there's a fatal fault.
Right.
So, and I don't know if DOT will do that or not. We talked about that briefly, but we have not necessarily investigated that. But it'd give me a lot greater sense of comfort to be able to get a contingent 2 contract with them. That item A and B or something like that would have to happen. Then we can keep on going down this path. But
Yeah, because, you know,
But we also need to get going on the path, because if we're not gonna, if this fails anywhere, we need to get going on what Plan B is, and we don't really have a Plan B at this stage.
well, I think JG made a good point. It is kind of in a location of town that's really the gateway from the bypass up there, and, you know, we will have control over it if we buy it and just want anything go there. But I think, Paul makes a good point, is on recreation, I could see this site, we could put tennis courts there, for example. That'd be a good place to put tennis courts, you could put quite a few out there, if they allow us to do it, if there's no restrictions in doing that.
Of watershed.
Yep, keep them out of the watershed, or that'd be our biggest thing, or do special allocation, but I hate to really do that for tennis
I
courts.
think it's a lot of it outside of watershed, you gotta find out, but, that ridge is pretty good little ways back.
Right.
And it's beautiful in that pond there, it really is. So there could be some natural amenities and add a little park in there. So there is some opportunity there, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to give up the option to control that corner. That's the biggest thing. Like, I don't want, like, if we have the opportunity to control that, I think that's our best bet. But as long as we pay a reasonable price for it, that makes sense.
So this is what Wake County shows as the watershed. As some of us have seen the property, the ridge really appears to be back here. So that's something, again, as if we move forward with the property, we're doing the surveying and the topo, that would really delineate where's that watershed line truly at. So that's something we would look into.
So what you were saying before, we got cash budget to pay for this?
We have, you have budgeted the funding for the purchase this year. And I believe you still have some funding available to start the development opportunity too. I don't think we have spent all that, but we'll have to review that. But I think I would like to get started if you're all good with continuing this journey a little bit.
Does it bother you with the ingress and egress that if you're coming from town, you can't turn left?
Mhm.
If you're going ingress and egress, you've got to,
Get on the bypass.
you got to get on the bypass and come back around.
Yes.
That
Do the
that
U-turn.
bothers me.
Especially
That
if you're talking
is
about
that
putting
is
tennis
very
courts
inconvenient.
there.
We're going to have an employee that's in a hurry.
Well, he said for
It's gonna-
Public Works, we'll be able to do full, didn't he?
Correct. For Public Works, DOT would probably allow us to have full access.
I'll tell you, I'd have to have that.
Right.
And you're going to have some upset neighbors who's been using that driveway forever.
Right. So
The house has been there, what, 30, 40 years?
Right. So the conversations that we did have with them said that, if it was a park or if a park was one of the examples they used, it would be a right in, right out. But Public Works, if that's the only thing there, would have the ability, most likely they would grant us, and then it would be up to us, do we feel safe with that movement, with the proximity to the bypass and the traffic. And really, I think it goes back to what we hear all the time is those peak hours. When is our staff going in and out during those peak hours? I think that's when it would be the highest risk, and when we would probably want to require the right in, right outs. And if you think, let me pull this back up here, and that's what we talked about as well. You'd go right here to the stoplight and do your U-turn and come right back into the property. That would be if it's a right in, right out and you're coming from town, that'd be the option right now.
I still say that turn in there to go right is very close to people coming off the bypass. And that's what I was trying to gauge when we were out there the other day. It's close. Like when you're coming off of the bypass and you're taking that right-hand turn, it looks further on here, but it really isn't. If there's a car stopped or is turning slow.
Improvements to the road there.
You're 330 feet from the existing driveway, 340 feet from the existing driveway from the bypass.
Yeah, so do we need to we'd have to put a turn lane in there or something, it would just be okay.
For a Public Works facility, no.
Not that many trucks, there's not that many stuff,
But
Yeah.
if a park or something was added, then you would have
But he's
that.
saying we do something else,
Other than Public Works.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Parcel improvements.
What were you saying, April?
You answered the question.
Okay, well, I think this deserves to come back to you about every other month for a period of time as because it's a little fluid. I do want to get some of these answers, but I also want to keep on going. So I think we have enough tonight to keep on going and make sure we get the answers that we need. And so we will make an appointment with DOT to verify. We'll read the appraisal, determine if that's adequate or not. And
As long as we're not stuck in this, you said conditional, so,
right.
yeah, as long as we don't get stuck,
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to buy anything we're not going to use, obviously.
of course.
Right.
But I can see the need, obviously, we need it. Cobblestone's coming up fast.
And I know we all went out there, but I would suggest go right by there again and look how far it is. It's further than you think.
It
you
is,
know.
I've walked it when I was
It's-
putting out
You'd
signs.
think it's close,
Yeah,
but you know.
it seems close on the map, but it is a little further.
It's further than you think, so. But that's just DOT rules. They don't want to, you know, right in, right out is what they want.
Thank
They
you.
like us controlling the corner. Big time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So next group then.
Next item, Main Street LAPP grant project update. This one should be a good one.
Can we take a quick?
Need a break? Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break, or let's say let's be back at 7:20 if we can. If we can't, then we'll
Thank
be a
you.
little bit later than that. Thank you.
But this year, I hope, because I don't feel as bad as I did last night. 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay, I call back to order the town board meeting, special meeting. And the next item is number 3, Main Street LAPP Grant Project Update. I'm Ronnie, nice to meet you. Introduce yourself to us and maybe address, if you would.
Thank you. I'm Betsy Watson with Stantec Consulting, and I am here to provide an update on the LAPP grant projects for the Main Street improvements. So it's hard to believe it's been a year since I was last here in August of 2019. And at that time, we were discussing the LAPP application process. And in February of this year, we got the good news that the LAPP grant application was successful. And since then, Stantec has been progressing final design. So I'm here tonight to provide an update on a few key items. Okay, our agenda tonight, I will provide a status update and a schedule update, an update on the Burlington Mills Road design portion of the project, Main Street at Young Street design update, some concepts for the public realm at Main and Young, and concepts for the proposed medians along Main Street. So in February 2020, we found out the great news that these projects had been selected for funding. So you may recall that we applied originally for 2 separate LAPP grants, one for the realignment of Burlington Mills Road and the other for improvements to Main Street from Burlington Mills Road northward to Young Street, including the intersection of Young Street. These 2 LAPP projects have since been combined into one project under an agreement between Rolesville and NCDOT. And this will make the design and approval and the submittal process easier on everyone. So now, rather than LAPP projects, we can refer to it as LAPP project, but interchangeable. So we are now in the process of final design for this project, and we anticipate advertisement for construction bids around September of 2021. After the construction bids come in, we go through the process of award, which will require approval from the town and NCDOT. And by the time the contract is awarded, we expect the contractor to be able to start work in early 2022. And we expect the project to take 2 construction seasons, which would put completion in summer, probably late summer 2023. And feel free to stop me or interrupt at any time with questions if they're relevant to that slide, but I'll certainly, obviously, we'll take them at the end as well. So the Burlington Mills Road realignment portion, as you know, Burlington Mills Road is being realigned as part of this project. So this will eliminate the current unsafe intersection skew that exists at the current intersection of Burlington Mills Road at Main Street, just down the road from here. So in addition to performing design for the LAPP project, Stantec is also working with Crosland Southeast, who is the developer of the proposed Walbrook project. So we recently received DOT's recommendations for road improvements that are going to be required for that development. Town staff, Stantec, and the developer are all working together to get all of those proposed improvements in that vicinity completed under one project, which would be the LAPP project. So we're going to have to race a little bit to get the developer improvements caught up to the LAPP schedule. But we believe it can be done, and that's our goal, and we believe it will be a major benefit to the community to have the road improved one time. So we understand that the road improvements for that development will come through this council for approval, and as a first measure, Stantec has drawn up a schematic of what those combined improvements will look like. So I'm not here to talk about Walbrook specifically, but I do want to show you how these improvements fold into the LAPP project. So this graphic on the screen, I know you can't see it great, but I've got some zoomed in views and they're in your packet as well. But it shows Main Street in the vicinity of Burlington Mills Road. And here you can see existing Burlington Mills Road. I'll use my this pointer tool that I just learned. So here's, I know it's a little faint on the graphic and in the aerial, but this is existing Burlington Mills Road. This is the realignment of Burlington Mills Road. To orient you, this is Team Extreme, this is Bojangles, this is Jonesville Road and Hampton Lake. And then Town Hall would be off the page in this direction. So the proposed development, which I have not shown here because, again, I'm not here to present Walbrook concepts or discuss that specifically, but it's largely in this vicinity with a tract here as well. That was actually recently added earlier this year. So
So all
out,
the little turnouts will be put in during the road construction that we see on this drawing, the turnouts into the,
yes, so, sorry, what's the question to that exact,
I
specifically?
see turnouts into the Crossland property. So all those turnouts will be installed, so the intersection will be completed with the road and things?
Exactly. So the idea is where you see those kind of turnouts or stub outs in the LAPP project plans, it would show those as literally being kind of stubbed out like they're shown here. And then the Croslands portion would tie to those under a different contract. But the road contractor that does the Main Street improvements and the Burlington Mills Road realignment would be building those stub outs, which is mainly within the public right of way. And then Crosland picks up and ties to those. So we would need to work very closely with their engineer that is Stewart.
And those are Crosland Southeast cost responsibility as part of the project.
Exactly. Exactly. And the turn,
We had to, she can describe it, we had to carefully delineate what's the LAPP and what's the private.
So they
Yes.
put some funds in for those type things.
We'll have a, yes.
and they'll have really considerable, given that we're trying to combine these improvements with the LAPP project, that has, puts on Crosland a considerable responsibility for those improvements. So what we have shown here is, to that end, outlined in blue are areas that Crosland is responsible for, or areas that their Walbrook improvements are on top of the LAPP improvements. So, and you can't see that real well, but again, that's why we've got those zoomed in views, and then you'll see a little better what's outlined in blue. Okay, and move this pointer out of the way. Okay, so this is just a zoomed in view, just so you can see a little better. Jonesville Road, Hampton Lake Drive, and Bojangles. And I'll just leave each one of these up on the screen for a few seconds so you can kind of look at the turnouts and the laneage, and if you have any questions on each one before we move on, that's fine.
And this entire stretch is on Crosland. This entire stretch is on Crosland.
Oh, correct. The entire, everything on this whole zoomed in view is south of the LAPP limits. So all of this is outlined in blue and is Crosland's, would be Crosland's responsibility or financial contribution. But you can see where, since it ties exactly, having this under one plan set, bid by one contractor, and getting into Main Street at the same time as far as lane closures and traffic disruption will be a really good benefit. Okay. And we can certainly come back to any, if I move along and you would like me to go back and give another minute to study, just let me know. Okay? All right. So our next zoomed in view is moving along Main Street northward. So this is Main Street between, we have the main Walbrook entrance, Team Extreme, Burlington Mills Road realignment. And again, you can see a little better here, the blue outlines that show improvements that are required due to the development. And that does include, I just want to point out, a second left turn lane from Main onto New Burlington Mills Road. And we have, so therefore then there's 2 lanes that come up, and one of them will turn right into the old Burlington Mills Road.
Betsy, can you, on this one, use your red dot to show about 200 feet to the south, the start of the LAPP project?
Yes, the start of the LAPP project, or if you will, the original LAPP limits, if Walbrook didn't exist or before we had Walbrook, we tied in the Main Street improvements somewhere in this vicinity just south of Team Extreme, and that's really just where we needed to tie in to the existing section of Main. So now, of course, it goes all the way down to Jonesville.
So I just want to make sure that I understand. Across from the dot right now, that road is already there, but it's the road next to it.
Well, so this actually is just a power line easement. This is here, and this is Team Extreme, and this is not here. So this is.
That's not there, but where's the road where it has the iron fence?
Ah,
That's not anywhere over there. Just trying to get my bearings.
Right. I think what you're referring to is there may already be an entrance stubbed out that Walbrook has. Okay, I'm not 100% sure. Let's see if the aerial shows that right now.
I'm trying to see.
It's possible it's not on the aerial if they probably came in recently and maybe you're using it as a construction
It's been
entrance.
there for a very long time.
Has it?
Can you go to the slide you were on? That dirt road is the access to the water tank.
Oh, so it runs with
So
the,
that's the, so that
with
may
the
be what
utility
you're talking about,
easement?
But that is about 200 feet to south of
Okay.
the street.
that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. So I thought that was, I was like, oh, wow, it's a little off.
And I can, it looks like a utility easement, but I see what Kelly's talking about. They've got an access road that just runs with it, so. Yep, so that's about where this entrance to, one of the entrances will be to this Paris tract. And that's the right in, right out, and then this is the full movement.
So one of these, Virginia Water Drive will come out on, right? So do you know which one that is?
Yes, right here. Let's see. So it is where this is to orient. I'll show you on a larger view. That might be actually the next is a little. Well, it doesn't show it. Let's go back to this larger view here. We have realign Burlington Mills. This will be a Burlington Mills extension into a roundabout that will meet Virginia Water right here.
But Virginia Water have two ways. They can either come out there or take the roundabout and come out where the big intersection is.
Correct.
It'd be like two choices there.
Exactly, which is nice, which is good options for access,
Right.
and here, and two good signalized, because this will be signalized.
So wait, is that the Virginia water next to the park?
Yes.
The little, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. And this is just our last zoomed in view to see the realigned Burlington Mills Road and old Burlington Mills Road. And that's really the update for the Burlington Mills Road, or the south end of the project, and as it relates to Walbrook. And next I was going to move to Maine, but we'll, unless anyone has any kind of further questions or discussion on this end of this project.
So the little road, I can't tell, what's the little yellow road?
This is very good question. This right here. And so the reason it has a yellow line is because it's really one of the few roads that's actually going to have it will literally be yellow, painted double yellow center, because so much of the section of Main Street that you see is going to be divided with medians in this section just for access control. So where you see the yellow is literally going to be the double yellow center line. But that's where we intend to realign existing Burlington Mills Road and pull it into the realigned Burlington Mills Road. And so this will be a stop control, but a full movement signal. So folks will be able to make if you're at the vet or the daycare, you can still come out to Main Street, but you can only turn right. So if you want to go toward town, you come up this way. You have a stop control full movement intersection. You'd make a left, and then you can come toward town at a signal.
So the other one only turned right only.
So the yellow is the existing road you said, correct?
So, well, not exactly. So the existing road is here with the pointer, and this portion under the pointer will be removed.
Or abandoned.
But it looks a little bit confusing, but the other white stays in, and maybe.
You're right. It is a little bit confusing. So, my apologies for that. Yeah, it's the point when we did this sketch or this exercise, it was really to show kind of new asphalt and new pavement. But you're right. It would be helpful to show this as a gray roadway, meaning, an active roadway. So this will still be active roadway.
That's where it goes all the way through and turn right out.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Yeah, I thought it just went into some parking lots. I was like, what is that?
Oh, apologies. Yeah, it would have been nice. We should have made this sketch kind of showed, I know we have 100 versions of it, so I certainly could have brought one that showed that. This will be active roadway, certainly.
What is that building?
Let's see, the veterinary and the daycare. So this is Rhymes and Reasons.
Rhymes and Reasons, I think it's.
So the daycare, they'll still have access to go left or right? Or
The-
only right?
Yep, so the daycare can come out like so, but they would have to be going south away from town. If they want to go toward town, they can make a left out of the daycare here and do this.
Wait, so just, okay, I'm not gonna hold this up because I had it on my last night. But the thicket of trees in between where the roads are going, is that going to be developed?
It is. That's a different, not under Walbrook, or as far as I know, I don't believe they're.
It is, he owns it.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if it's actually calling it part of Walbrook or if he had a different name for it or something. But yes, Crosland is developing that. Great question. And in fact, you can't see it very well, but this is a proposed entrance to their site, as is this, to this site. Yeah. No, great question.
It's coming before the board soon for some reason. I
Hope so.
can't remember what reason it's coming for.
Oh, they stopped the rezoning for a moment. They want to work on the master plan and the special use permit on the other, the Walbrook side. So.
Absolutely. Great questions. Okay, we're ready to move to Main Street at Young Street. So this past summer, one of the things that we did once we got word that the LAPP grant was successful is we investigated a design option for Main Street at Young Street that would reduce the construction impacts, because our option for Main at Young is going to be pretty impactful during construction, and that's just necessitated by the existing conditions and the goals of the project. So, but we felt that part of our due diligence was to investigate this other design option. So we did that and recorded a 12-minute video presentation explaining those two design options. And that was posted to the town's YouTube channel on July 21st. So maybe some of you may have had the opportunity to view that. We held a virtual stakeholder meeting on August 11th. And after receiving some really great feedback, it was decided, and our team is moving forward with our original option, which is option 1. So that option is, and I'm not going to go through the couple design options, I'm just going to give kind of a review of this one that we're moving forward with. In this option, the road will be undercut to become lower than where it is existing, and that is absolutely necessary in order to get the grades of your curb and sidewalk worked out in relation to the storefronts, because the storefronts don't move. So that will have some heavy impacts during construction, and we've met with property owners and stakeholders about that, and we will do so more throughout the design process. The intersection will be closed to vehicles for about 2 months is our estimate, but businesses will remain open. We'll make sure to provide a really good transportation management plan for vehicles and pedestrians so that people will have a place to park and walk safely through a work. It'll be messy, but it will be safe and accessible. And the final product will have greater flexibility for the public space or the public realm.
And Mr. Eddings will not lose his front parking.
Well, and I can show you that design. So we've talked with him about parking. So it's not going to be right in front of his storefront anymore where it is currently, but it will be mitigated because we're going to provide angled on-street parking.
Okay.
One thing about the road closure, let's make sure we talk to the fire department so they'll know what's taking place, because they're really located close to this intersection there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Great point.
They would probably need new plans to respond by.
Yes, great point. And we would want their input, and absolutely they would need to be kept informed of exactly the dates so that they can respond in turn. So speaking of the Main and Young Street public realm, so the public realm is defined as exterior spaces accessible to the public. So our landscape architect has come up with some design concepts for the public realm at this intersection, and based on some feedback the team received on August 11th. So we want our outdoor spaces to be flexible, and some ideas for that would be simple hardscape ideas with limited fixed objects and possibly movable seating and chairs and umbrellas, which would really just provide flexibility and could be moved or stored for events and such. Seasonal planters can create a sense of safety for pedestrians, but also give you something different to look at in different times of the year, and certainly lighting.
So will that be done during the project, or is that left to the, I guess, private property owners to do that?
Our goal is to do an element of landscape and hardscape under this project that would be installed, that would be as part of these construction plans and part of this project. But certainly, you know, we have a budget to think about, so it might not be the world for this project. And to me, the cool thing about this intersection and this plan is that I think that the property owners will have opportunity to do some of their own things, as long as it kind of fits in with the character. But like right now in front of Rolesville Furniture are some pretty planters with mums. You could envision ones that are 3 times that big or some seasonal fall decorations like what's in front of the Off the Hook seafood today that I saw earlier today. But also if down the road there was, you know, a cafe and you wanted to have cafe seating, sandwich boards to advertise sales or events. So I think there's under this project, we do intend to do landscape and hardscape improvements, but I think there'll be opportunity too for the businesses to kind of enhance that, if you will.
I think the key is outdoor space. And
Exactly.
then it'll be up to the private owner to provide the amenities as
Right.
approved by the town.
But there, you know, I guess there's some that's, some in the right of way. So are we going to landscape the right of way that's there, or is that what you're talking about that we may provide?
Yes, that's a good question, because the right-of-way actually currently on, if you can picture, you know, Susanna's and Rolesville Furniture that have the building fronts that are at the angle, the public right-of-way is actually currently right up to those storefronts. So it is today. So right now, those parking spaces are actually in public right-of-way. So with this design, we get a much better and safer where we take that parking actually on the street. And then that area right in the storefronts is opportunity for, you know, this public space that's enjoyed by shop goers, pedestrians. I say bicyclists. I picture walking your bike and having a nice bike rack to put it at, and people enjoying the space. So it technically is within public right of way.
So that area will be done by the project then, is that?
Mm-hmm. Things like lighting and benches. Now, not within the constraints of the budget and the project goals is not the world, but yes, there will be a landscaping plan as part of this construction plans and built under the project. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have a plan.
Yes.
You don't have to go back, I can ask you later. I was just curious how would that look? Seems like it's a whole.
So it will actually look, so right now, you see where this current road just kind of melds into parking, and that really provides no delineation between cars, vehicles, bicycles, parking, shop goers. So the road actually becomes, it's a little hard to envision, but it becomes a bit lower, and the storefront becomes whatever material, whether it's concrete or stone pavers, but then you have sidewalk and then you curb it so that you have to get a little bit lower to get down to the road.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot of work.
So,
And that lowering has to go on all 4 directions.
unfortunately, yes. Yes, sir.
Now, I know you guys will figure it all out, but when we lower this road with water and everything else, are we going to cause any issues for surrounding properties with outflow and everything of water from that intersection?
A great question. The drainage has been a very big, from day one, we knew that drainage is already a concern at this intersection. So we're taking very seriously to make sure that our improvements are going to make it better and certainly not worse. So no, the last thing we want to do is push water into storefronts. So to that end, that's actually one of the elements where our design effort has grown a little bit from the time that we started this project, but we've gotten on board a actual sub-consultant that specializes in hydraulic design. And so they've been a partner of Stantec for a long time, so they're called Sungate, and they have already taken a preliminary look at both design options. And their opinion was that we could get both design options to drain effectively, but the one that we're going with will be easier to drain. And so he feels, and Stantec feels very confident we will get this to drain and not create ponding or push water into storefronts. So we're being very mindful of that. Great question. We'd love to feature some local materials at the intersection of Main Street and Young Street if we have the opportunity to pay homage to Rolesville granite and some hardscape elements. We certainly want to honor the history of downtown if we have opportunity through public art or wayfinding signage. Street trees in strategic locations. Of course, we don't want to go nuts with street trees, but any street trees would be strategic in placement and provide shade but not block businesses. And I don't know about y'all, but I find our area I've lived in Wake County my whole life and think it's pretty hot in the summer and only getting hotter. So street trees will, down the road, if you have cafe seating like this picture, or even for just walking around, street trees can really provide some much needed shade. So for any street trees, we would recommend not just a pit, but we would want to plan for good subsurface root growth. And you can put in certain systems during construction, such as structural soils or systems that go under the sidewalk that provide for good root growth. And that way your canopy can grow and the tree can do its job. And what's fun is you can watch the trees grow as Rolesville grows. And it's kind of a neat thing. And we would want some benches. So moving on from there to some possible, this is my last little bit, moving on from there to possible median treatments for along Main Street. So switching gears a little bit. Along Main Street, medians are proposed in certain areas between Burlington Mills Road up to Young Street with, of course, breaks for access, and we will make sure that everybody has appropriate access. So we know that whatever method or material is chosen for the medians will be the responsibility of the town to maintain. And nothing is totally maintenance free, but we're sensitive to concerns about maintenance and cost. So one option would be medians planted with native plants, which would ultimately be a low maintenance option that would provide some seasonal color. You could use decorative paving, raise medians with paving patterns. They might have options for permeable paving materials. And in that option, you've got limited to no plantings. Median bioswales are kind of a hybrid option with a dual function with for both aesthetics and stormwater treatment.
I saw something like that at the train station.
Yeah, in Raleigh?
Yeah.
I believe so, yes. And there are some, if you've driven on North Raleigh along Sandy Forks Road, there's some, I'm not sure if it's exactly bioswale, but it's kind of a mixture of your plant material and pavers that provides for some stormwater treatment along there.
And speaking of the surface, they did use some kind of material that would help absorb the water.
Yes, I don't know about that particular project, but in something like this, or in something like where we looked at these permeable paving materials.
Something like that, actually.
Yep, probably so. The idea there is that they actually help with that water that falls on it isn't actually water that you have to drain off the road that goes into your curb and your stormwater drainage systems. So, and it's not, you can certainly, if you don't do it, we'll certainly have the systems in place that will drain the stormwater runoff. So it's not, always a necessity, but it's something that you could consider, because then water that falls on that is actually, since it's permeable, it doesn't become stormwater runoff.
Some kind of way, I think they also had it going into the flowers, whatever those particular plants were that they used. Some type of way they had it draining that way as well. So there wasn't a lot of maintenance in terms of.
Probably. I am not, that is not my area of expertise, not being a landscape architect, or erosion control specialist, but so I would think that is, in something like this with your bioswales, yes, I would think that maybe there's opportunity for it to, especially once it's established, to require less watering. But I don't know for sure. I can't, not my complete area of expertise, but. And then just some more kind of options that would be hybrids of those type of, plant plus stone material, and using drought tolerant grasses and perennials. And then that last kind of pebble stone hardscape design with plant pockets is something that's pretty cool. An option like this would be slightly less maintenance in the long term, but a little more costly up front. So different kinds of options. But that's all I have this evening for the landscape. And
we have to make a decision on that, or what?
Great question. Actually, that was my next thing I was going to say, is that we would likely take this to a stakeholder and public involvement process, or one that's perhaps virtual, or perhaps a survey via social media or at the town website would be probably something like this will be conducive to a kind of a quicker public involvement type effort. We've discussed this at past public involvements and charrettes during the vision plan, and this is kind of one of those things that it's a lot of really cool options to look at, and everybody's got, you know, a different opinion on it. So, but we are at the point where we probably need to, where we really need to nail down some things, and so I will work with the town on this.
Or do you want to make the decision? Do you want some public, I guess the question tonight would be, do you want some public input?
I lean towards the public. I don't know about you.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay.
It's not a rush, it's not like it's gonna be there ready to plant tomorrow.
Well, good point, but it's funny, from the design side is the person that's thinking, okay, 100% final plans by this June, you back that up and, you know.
We're going to move it along.
Yeah, well, the way schedules, my favorite expression is time flies. So I think we are at a point. So we'll work with the town on setting up some kind of a survey or putting some options out on a website that we can do something, you know, I would think that's fairly quick.
But wouldn't we need to do it kind of, not fast, but this is hinging on so many other projects, right?
The design will be really not hinging on that project.
But starting it, I mean.
What's that?
Starting it. Not the design, but just starting the project after the design. No, not really?
I don't think so. Our goal is to put together a set of construction plans for this main street that now, with Walbrook involvement, it's going to go all the way, correct, all the way from Jonesville all the way up to Young. And so I don't want to speak for Crosland, because I think you will probably be, you know, speaking with Crosland shortly, but I think he would tell you that they are moving along and willing and ready to do some improvements ahead of, you know,
okay, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, ahead of current phases. Mm-hmm. So, great point, though. But
by the beginning of the year, we'll probably get out some public input. You know, I want to be cognizant of, we kind of make sure we put out there what we can afford, but also, because the last thing I want to do is put out there something we can't afford and have false expectations. But I think we've talked about a couple, 3 different kind of palettes to show, and try and put some pros and cons on them so the public can understand there's, you know, high maintenance, low maintenance, or high cost, or whatever, and what the benefits of these are, and then get some public input, and then I think it is your decision then at that time, because I think it is an important decision. It sets the premise of the interchange, the whole road, and so it's really an important discussion, I think, that we want to have fairly quickly in the next 60 to 90 days, probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
And she's leaning towards it.
Well, then our landscape architect has to put together the design plans once it's chosen, so she'd probably appreciate that as well. But yeah, I think it's some exciting options. I'm really excited about the possibilities here. And so I really appreciate y'all's time tonight and letting me give you this update, and appreciate the town's continued partnership with us. So.
I have one more question, because it's going to drive my curiosity.
Sure.
crazy. On this last little slide you went over, what are those? Are those like drainage grates or something?
Oh, of course, your last question is one I really can't answer. I don't know. Not being a landscape architect, I am not familiar enough.
Maybe drainage.
What page, Jill? The last one?
Last one.
I've got it up here.
It's those little rectangular, it looks like maybe drainage. Grates or something.
Yeah, so if the interior of this island is going to be planted, and you can see that right-hand picture is certainly, this is under construction at this point. So if that's going to be planted, then that would be permeable. So maybe it is, I really don't know. It may just be part of how they construct it, to be honest with you, because you wouldn't be needed for drainage if the whole area is permeable. It's just, you know, you wouldn't have
No worries, I just thought.
flow through it.
I've seen that before. I'll go.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Enjoyed
much
the
for your time. I
presentation.
appreciate it very much.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
And Betsy, thank you for coming up tonight.
absolutely. My pleasure. It's a lovely night.
I think Betsy is also one of those that hasn't been out very much, so, right?
I've not. I'm getting out in the world a little more, so it's great to see everybody in
We're
person.
introducing all these folks to the Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Betsy, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Betsy.
Number 4, future budget amendments.
So very quickly, we can review in depth if you like, but we'd like to bring a budget amendment with all these items next meeting, so that we have it for to keep on going with Main Street Vision Plan. Betsy explained some of the additional survey work we need to do, the right-of-way acquisition, and hiring a company to help us through that. We anticipate, and it may be a bit high, we kind of put it high, but we probably need at least about another $228,000 to accomplish the final design of the Main Street plan for this year and probably into next. JG's here to talk about the farm, but I think we've talked to each group as we toured about the necessity to do the survey out there. We can talk a little bit further about that if you have any questions tonight. But that is about $80,900. I gave you an update on Friday about the logo on the water tank, and our gift was disappeared. So we must pay the bill. And we need to reappropriate that funding. Boardroom audiovisual. So we were able to get generally a green light from Wake County to make some improvements in here that is due to COVID. And what we are proposing that up here, we would be able to build a virtual station, essentially, with a camera, TV, and such, to be able to allow this room to interact with the virtual world. And in addition to that, as we told you before, any day now, our sound system has possibility, the box that creates the sound and works within this has the opportunity to go down and fail on us due to age and such, and introducing this into that will increase that likelihood. So the Wake County CARES money will fund 75% of that, and so we would need to fund about $11,250, of which we would get reimbursed all of that except for $3,700 through the CARES Act. And that's going to happen very fast. We want to get that done even maybe before Thanksgiving.
So the camera will be set up on this side of the room?
There will be like a station right up here on this wall with a video screen and a camera and a mic. So then if Betsy can't make it tonight, she could interact and be part of a virtual session with us, or us also. And then Cobblestone Consulting, we have exceeded our current budget within our ability to for that negotiation that we did on development agreement. We anticipate some needed expenses to continue on that and wrap that up. So we're asking for a one-time $15,000. We don't know if that's going to be used, but we just think there will be some need to continue to use Ashley in the next few months also. So those would all come to you in a budget amendment ordinance to put on consent agenda on next meeting. If you
The
have any
total
questions.
of all of those are $355,000.
Sir.
And that's coming from the general fund balance.
Fund balance, extension fund balance. Yes, except for the farm. Farm's going to be parks fee.
And then you get a reimbursement on the
And the
CARES Act
right,
and
right.
the video stuff.
So it's 15, 19, 228. That's 247 out of the general fund balance. Any further questions on that? I do not. We will have that ready for next Tuesday.
And did you include, I read somewhere, but I can't put my finger on it right now, about the stakeholders, there'll be some additional funding required for stakeholders. Is that included in the total, an estimate, or no?
For the Main Street Vision Plan? Yes, that's included. That'll get us through final design and to bid. Everything. Okay, that's all we have for tonight. I think we're ready to go into executive session, Mayor, if you are so inclined.
Yeah, I think so. Did anything we need to address before we go into closed session? Don't sound like it. All right, well, I'll take a motion.
Go into closed session pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318.115 for the purpose of establishing or instructing the town staff concerning the position to be taken by the town in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a second? Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed. Thank you. Appreciate it. And we are in closed session.